This afternoon, it's emerging that more people have been trapped in their homes by flood waters following weeks of consistent rains in Accra. We just brought you a story about how residents of Oyarifa Green Hills had been trapped in their homes for 5 days by the flood waters. JoyNews is learning they are not alone. More than 8 households at Abeye in the Gawes municipality have been caged by the flood waters for close to 2 months now. My colleague Manuel Coranting, who reported on the Oyarifa situation, is also at Obeye in the East municipality. He's been there and he joins me in the studio for more. How do you mention that?
Obeye.
Obeye. Yes. Okay. First, before we even go to Obeye, tell me what's the update on Oyarifa?
Well, this morning we got the municipal chief executive for the Lankwantana Madina municipality, Jennifer Dede Ejabeng, who said she had instructed the NADMO officials within the area to, as it were, get the water pumped. The update we have just the past couple of minutes is that that pumping was not successful. And so the NADMO officials have actually packed out their gadgets out of the area. And so as it stands now, the place at Oyarifa is still flooded. The people in there are still trapped in their houses. They say they are going to explore other options on how they are able to pump the water. That's for the Oyarifa situation. But what you're seeing in your shots currently is visuals from the Obeye area. In fact, this particular area is called Ayikan Dublo. It's within the Gawes municipality. And the residents there tell me that for close to 3 months now, they have been caught up in their homes. The affected households, about 8 of them, all of them are unable to go out of their houses without getting wet. And so they have to use Wellington boots to walk through the huge pools of water that have gathered in the area. They say that it is as a result of a construction of a road project that you know, they say the contractor has sort of blocked the culvert under the road, which essentially has also blocked the waterway. And so for now, the water just gathers in their homes and does not get any, exit point to move out. And so it's been there for the past close to 3 months. And one gentleman actually spoke to me and said that, well, for now, they even see fishes in the water. They see snakes. They see some reptiles in the water, as you're seeing in your shots now, Aisha.
Of course. And then so this is the update on what we've been monitoring for the past 5 days. And now Obeye in the East municipality is also having their fair share of the rains. Is their situation different from what you saw in Oyarifa?
Yes, Aisha. Indeed, the only difference, as I maintain, is the number of days that they've had to suffer it. At Oyarifa, it's been like 5 days. At Obeye, it's close to 3 months. And they say that the water is not receding. And so they are all, caged in that area. And they have to use, there's a gentleman who took me to see a ladder. So he has 2 ladders, put or inclined against the wall so that he climbs up the ladder into his house and climbs up the ladder out of his house just to be able to move out. He says his wife has not been out of the house for the past 2 months.
And I even heard someone say that they've not been able to go out to buy food.
Exactly. And so for now, what they do is to the least opportunity they get, they go out and get non-perishable foods, canned foods and so on and so forth, so that they can stock up and be in the house until they get the needed help, which has not been coming.
Has NADMO spoken about this? Have they gone to the area? What have they been telling you?
In fact, I got in touch with the one of the engineers in charge of this particular road project, which is being named as the cause of this the situation you have there. And she tells me that there are talks to actually get a culvert constructed to, as it were, ease the pressure of from the water in the area. As it stands now, there's not been any exact, if you like, direct response that has been giving relative to the situation, but they are hoping that they are able to do that. In the meantime, the residents are caging, and it's just, ticking by the day, moving out. We are close to 3 months now. It waits to be seen how longer the residents would have to go caged in their houses, Aisha.
All right, and of course, the flooding situation in our country is getting worse by the day, and we journalists are getting tired of revising the same old script for years. Let's have a bigger conversation on how to deal with this situation. And Engineer Abdullahi Mahama joins us for more on this conversation. Sir, I'm grateful for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Aisha.
So what exactly is the problem with us as a country? Reason why we see these recurring flooding, after just a little rain?
There is good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. There is a level of indiscipline cutting across all sector, i.e. from the residents, from the institutions who have been mandated by law to ensure that they sanitize the system. Now, if I have to just zero in onto the Oyarifa before any other general one, I was part of those who constructed the Oyarifa, Ayimensa, Pedua, Sikitasi, Ebri Road all the way to Manfi in 2004 to 2007. At that time, the Oyarifa, if you are Ebri bound, the right-hand side was fairly a very flat land. And then in my subsequent interviews with your station and other sister stations, I may declare that what I've seen on the left-hand side, if you are a brief bound, that is the mountainous areas being scraped up the vegetation, estates springing up like mushrooms on the left-hand side, where is the mountainous areas, where they have actually covered all the buffer, the buffer areas underneath the mountain. And then the sharp growth of these estate developers without recourse to the law is one of the problems. Ironically, the MCE and the MP are now crying foul. I'm so disappointed hearing the MCE making comments like laughable, and I'm a bit disappointed in the lawmaker also trying to initiate a demonstration. Why? The Assembly has power under the Land Use and Spatial Planning Act of 2016. They also have the power under the Building Regulation LI 1960, 1996, 1630. Now, these laws give the Assembly the power to ensure that nobody, even if a recalcitrant or a very bad developer decide to infringe on the right of the Assembly, they have the power to stop any development happening within that corridor. Oyarifa is a fairly flat area. And what I preempted about 10 years, 6 years, 5 years ago is now meeting us in the face. The topography is such that the road was elevated high and there were adequate culverts constructed underneath the road to allow a movement of water from the hill area to lower area in all directions. Just about 2019, a congregation went to church around the Oyarifa Special Ice in the evening. And interestingly, all the people there slept at the church because it started raining in the evening. All the church areas was filled about 1 meter and they slept on their benches. The Assembly has all these records. So if the Assembly now, headed by an MCE, decide to say that it's like a rhetoric, as in that it's laughable, that the people are ranting through their MP, then the least said about that statement, the better. Now let me give you just a few examples. The Assembly has the power that anybody who is putting up a building, first and foremost, under their building permit regulation 13, has to ensure that his physical development gets approval from the Assembly. So if the Assembly has been sleeping and have allowed people who are desperate for homes, okay, some of them who do not actually consider having to think about the future in an event where there are rainfall, to go and put up structures in unapproved areas, then Assembly is liable and has to be blamed squarely. I don't see why at this point in time, everything that happens in all the district or all the municipality, we want to go and hold the central government. I am an engineer and I've been chastising my engineers who are heading the works department of all the various assemblies because they are checking their responsibility. Now, let me give you these few examples. When you look at the permits, the requirement by anybody to put up any building in a hilly area, a nice area, a fairly good area or not, the first requirement that the assembly requests from the person is that the person is supposed to construct the building having been given the permit by the assembly. So when you go to the regulation 13 of the assembly, it says that a person shall not undertake any physical development of land within a district unless that person has been issued with a permit by the district assembly within the jurisdiction in which the land is situated. Now, if this person overlooks this requirement, the assembly is mandated by the same act at 2016. When you go to Article 121, it states that the officer, in this case the assembly, may without notice to the developer effect or carry out instant prohibition, abatement, alteration, removal, or demolition of an unauthorized development if that breach is creating an environmental nuisance as defined in an enactment relating to the environment or interferes with the use of the public right of space. And this critical example classifies an environmental nuisance. So the assembly, headed by the MCE, which has a committee, a works committee, which has an engineer, a planning officer, a NADMO officer, a fire service officer, ECG, and all those embodiments have overlooked, and Oyarifa has got it to this state. I am saddened that as an individual, I've been speaking about this mess, which is growing or creeping without any recourse to the law for the past 10 years. And it seems that my engineers who have been employed at the assemblies are sleeping. One of the most important things that we have to know is that I have become an advocate, okay, with all the risk involved. Now, my colleagues who run to us tell us that some of them who want to go by the laid down rules and regulation are victimized by the same MMDCs because of political influence. I have the gut to have some guys, evidence of people who have been transferred from their district because they wanted to do the right thing. Now, the most critical one, when you go to the building regulation, LI 1960, there's one of the articles that states, and this goes to the Oyarifa people or the assembly. It states that Regulation 13, Part 2, indicate that no site, and in this case, no land liable to flooding shall be built upon without adequate provision for flood control. These are clear-cut, explicit laws which doesn't need any lot of interpretation. So even if the assembly tells us that they don't own the lands, let's say, Aisha, you have about 1 acre of land at Oyarifa that you want to sell, and that land is situated in a flood-prone area. It's only incumbent on you as the individual to ensure that you have adequately provided measures to control the flood before the assembly would have to do their inspection and then allow permit to be given to any developer in developing those areas. One of the things that we have not noticed at Oyarifa is that the springing up of estates like mushrooms. People have come to stay there from the time I was doing the construction or also part of the construction, and they didn't have any problem because they bought ideal lands, they developed their land peacefully. Even though I admit that a lot of people have also come in, and even with the rain, as they are standing there, people are still putting out their buildings in the waterway, as I'm speaking with you right now. Now let's look at the people who have actually bought their lands at the time that there was no issue, at the time that they knew that all the culverts were working. Then 10 years down the line, and a developer or an individual decided because he has so much money, he wants to block a culvert area or a channel and put up the building. You don't hold the individuals who are now suffering, but the assembly. Like I said on Saturday on one of the programs I had on one of the teaser stations, that I have decided to single-handedly, with the help of a lawyer, start to address the same stimulant mess that is beginning to creep its ugly head in Nsawam. And I will implore all engineers who find themselves in these areas to start to stand out and be counted. if our assemblies have decided to be sleeping.
Engineer Mahama, I understand the passion with which you talk about this situation. In fact, I feel the same way here in the studio. But governments over the years have promised, and I'm happy you point at the assemblies for failing to do their jobs. Governments, I mean, over the years have said that they will do one thing or the other to deal with this mess. But the problem keeps compounding. What should be our approach in handling this? You talk about engineers taking up the matter, but let's look at the bigger picture, at the government level.
You see, Aisha, let's, as an engineer, I'm speaking with the engineer's eye. Before the government comes in to handle the huge ones, the assembly is part of government. And the assembly has been headed off by a government representative. I know the challenge involved in government trying to get so much money to construct roads, arterial roads, collector roads within the districts across the country. But if the assemblies decide to go to the back and oversee to such kind of reckless construction, the roads will not yield any positive results. I have stated about 2-3 years ago that no matter the expansion of culverts, storm drains, the Odo silting, and all major drains that are being constructed in Accra, if we do not tackle Ayimensa, Oyarifa, Peduase, Amasaman, Makati Hills, Pabinya, Brekusu area, what is happening there? A government does not refocus to handle the mess being created by individuals and corporate bodies, i.e. estate developers, who create tens of thousands of storm drains in Accra. But unfortunately, the water that will be collecting or be expected to be received in Accra cannot be contained by these culverts. So I am putting the blame first and foremost that the assemblies have to start to work, and individuals who are a bit knowledgeable in all these districts should start to question what the assembly, in this case, the physical planning authority at the assembly, and then the works department head at the assembly are doing to also try and have more or less a piecemeal, a small approach towards sanitizing the local area. Because you see, the road construction that we have done over the years, I've noticed that in recent times, roads suddenly start to flood. And I was asking the question, if a road was constructed about 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and that road is not flooding, and within a matter of 1 year, like I've seen from Kwabenya police station towards Hachu, this year for the first time, Hachu-Kwabenya road has flooded more than 1 meter. Why? Because from the Kwabenya police station en route to Hachu, on the right hand side around the Allied Science, developers and individuals have come to construct a more than 200-meter wall, obstructing the stream of flow of water underneath the road. That cannot always be to the government. There's a local assembly in that area who has been mandated by law to ensure that these things do not start to trickle within that area before it metamorphoses to the greater picture. Because if everybody is doing these small ones within their district, what we call in my school, for instance, we said brighten the corner where you are. So if every assembly decides that they will nip this in the bag by trying to ensure that investors, developers, residential buildings are done in conformity with these beautiful laws of the assembly, the LI, the Land Use Special Order at 2016, and then the Building Regulation LI 1630 1996. These two documents alone can bring this issue to a great minimum in terms of percentage of flooding. And I am so what do you call it? I'm so abreast with information within the Accra enclave, and I take it upon myself in any opportunity I get on radio and TV to keep on hammering about what the assemblies ought to start doing, because the assembly is part of government. And it's so painful that with all the power that they have, they want to go to the central government. The central government has a budget, and they will handle their budget as and when they need them, they have the money. But the local assembly ought to start to work and be counted. Otherwise, like I've said earlier, I'm saying today, in the next 3, 4, 5 years again, Accra cannot contain the flood waters that will come, no matter what happens in Accra or the expansion of the drainages. I'm sorry, I have left Accra because I cannot stay in this mess. I am foreseeing that in the next 10 years, we cannot contain the flood waters within the setup because of the non-performance of the local assemblies. Let's start to address the issue from where it is starting from. And the assembly is responsible not the central government, but engineers like myself have been put at the positions who have so knowledgeable that this area cannot be developed by any developer. And
Engineer Mahama, with the information that you have at hand, is this something that you've brought to the notice of the Greater Accra minister, for instance? I know he's a fine gentleman and will, accept such engagement.
So you may use this your medium. I've done several attempts. I've done a lot to get some of the attention. I don't need this thing for popularity. I have done this for the past 17 years, and I've projected and given a lot of information or predicted. Unfortunately, I've been predicting some of the bad things which are happening, like the immense collapse of the mountain area, the Wager one, the flood in Accra, the circle interchange issues. This, if you go on the net and you just go, or you go to my Twitter handle at Muhammad Abdullahi, you will see countless of this there. I have tried to get to the minister and other people. It's up to them to also open their doors for us, because we're having so much pain in learning a lot of the history of the country and adding our engineering bit to it, but people are sleeping.
Certainly,
your station knows me so well. Joy FM, Joy TV, everybody, they have all the records of what I've been saying for the past 6-7 years, and all of them are on your network portals.
It's certainly a conversation that we'll keep having until we have less floods or none after every rainfall in Accra and other parts of the country. Engineer Abdullahi Mahama, I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. He is a civil engineer, but Manuel, you've been speaking with some authority. I mean, you spoke with the MCE, the MP for the Oyarifa Medina, Francis Sosu has also been responding. What exactly have they been saying would help deal with this challenge?
Well, I think that everybody agrees, and all the authorities indeed that we've been speaking to agree that the long-lasting solution will be to expand the culverts, the drains, and so on and so forth. Particularly at the Oyarifa area, there are no storm drains, and so that seems to be the long-term solution. But in the interim, it seems to be a merry-go-round of blame games that are being, thrown about. For instance, this morning, the Member of Parliament, sort of was trading blames with the Municipal Chief Executive for the area. In the end, as these blame games are played, it's the people who indeed are the suffering end of the entire situation. So for some of them, they've had to take the situation into their own hands. Some of them, I see some of them packing out of the areas that they are having, perhaps temporary evacuation, which are, individually inspired. And so that's the situation. There's not been, at least at this moment, any direct response from the authority, save for the Oyarifa area, where NADMO officials today went with their gadgets, but had to move away because the situation was more than their machines could contain.
Manuel Kranting is our man. He's now the flood ambassador.